At Ashley, you'll find colorful furniture that brings your home to life. Ashley makes it easier than ever to express your personal style with an array of looks in fun trending hues to choose from earth tones to vibrant colors to calming blues and greens. Ashley has pieces for every room in the house in the season's most sought-after shades. A more colorful life starts at Ashley. Shop in store, online today. Ashley, for the love of home.
This is your Chargers linebacker, Daiyan Henley, and you're tuning in with Chargers Unleashed.
Welcome to another edition of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Dan Wolkenstein here with you from the LAFB Network. If this is your first time tuning in the show, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Dan Wolkenstein, let me hear it one time. Victory Monday on Chargers Unleashed. Oh, been waiting a long time to say that sentence. These are what these live shows are for. The emotions are high. Tensions were high during the game yesterday. But damn, did it feel good to get a victory. Season opener over the Raiders. Chargers win 22-10 over the Las Vegas Raiders.
Say it again.
Chargers win 22-10 over the Las Vegas Raiders. That's all I'm going to say, Dan. Take it away.
I don't care if it's victory brisket, victory tofu. I don't care if it's victory. Give me all the food. Chargers were eating. J.K. Dobbins is eating. Chargers fans are celebrating. Alex Silva, who's got it better than us? You heard all of the Chargers in the locker room post-game during the press conference with the nobody. And boy, did that feel good. Chargers defeat the Raiders 22-10. All the crap from Raiders fans after the 63-point, whatever you call it, hashtag shout out and thank you. All the talk leading up to that game. All the talk. I was at the game. All the talk and violence and stupidity, not from all Raiders fans, but from lots of them, only to say bye-bye to all of them again as the Chargers bounce the Raiders with physicality and impose their will on the Las Vegas Raiders, who got punked towards the end of it. So many exciting things to talk about, though, Jake. How are you feeling after this? I mean, I was so jazzed in this game. I can't tell you what it feels like, Chargers fans who are at SoFi. You deserve this. And as Jim Harbaugh said, Jake, we are the lucky ones. We've been through this. We've stuck with them as they've kind of transformed. And Jake, we're here to celebrate a week one victory. How you feeling?
Dan, I can't really say much more than what you just said. We were all waiting to see what's it going to look like under Jim Harbaugh. What's this defense going to look like? What's the offense going to look like? And in the first half, hey, look, we got to admit, there was a lot of question marks. Offensively. Defensively.
Talk about
Give me 4 quarters of that on a week-to-week basis. And probably the biggest thing, Dan, I messaged you halftime Chargers were down 7-6.
You messaged me. Hold on. You messaged me a shit ton.
I had to. Not going to lie. But the biggest thing that we were waiting for was to see what were going to be the second half adjustments. We've heard from assistant coaches talking about how good Jesse Minter is in making second half adjustments. How is Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman going to make their adjustments after getting only 4 yards rushing in the first half? How are you going to get any type of offensive rhythm going after the Raiders were essentially dominating the interior of the Chargers' offensive line? What were they going to do? Then the second half came around. It looked damn good, Dan. Oh. It looked damn good. And like I tweeted out earlier today, this was some rarefied air that the Chargers ended up getting this victory on. This was the third time in 5 years that the Chargers held their opponent to 10 points and had a single player rush for over 100 yards. The other 2 times, January 1st of 2023 against the Rams, that was back in the short stint that Baker Mayfield was the quarterback during that particular game, again, towards the end of the season. So it really wasn't that big of a meaningful game at that point in time. The time prior to that, Dan, December 12th of 2019, back when Phillip Rivers was still the quarterback of the Chargers, and Austin Eckler ran for 101 in that particular game. It's not often that something that took place yesterday in that stat line has happened to the Chargers. And to get back to the philosophy of what Jim Harbaugh said he wanted to do coming in, we all expected the run game to set the tone, set the pace. We just had to wait really until the second half to really see it get going. But Dan, credit where credit is due to the Chargers. They didn't abandon the run. Committed to it. The interior blocking in the second half was much better. And the defense was on fire.
Oh, we're talking about it. Don't you worry.
Dan, I go back to the comments that Hayden Hurst had talked about during one of his early press conferences during mandatory minicamp, when he said, because he knows what that whole Baltimore Ravens mentality was, he said, we're going to get conditioned to play 60 minutes of football, where we're going to be the ones wearing down the opposing team. As that game drug on, and especially after putting the 22 points up after the Ladd McConkey touchdown, that's what I thought about. And even Jim Harbaugh kind of alluded to it in his post-game press conference. When the Raiders decided to punt in Chargers territory on a 4th and 1, he said, and the rest of the team said, they could feel the Raiders starting to wilt a little bit. And they smelled blood in the water, and they were going after it at that point in time. And seemingly, they did. On the back of J.K. Dobbins offensively, and after a number of crucial passes made by Justin Herbert. Again, Justin Herbert didn't have to do much in this game. When was the last time that we had to say that? And it feels damn good.
Boy, does it feel good. Victory Keto cinnamon buns from friend of the show, the director. How does it feel, director, huh? Chargers fans, let's hear in the chat. What was your favorite part of this Chargers victory over Las Vegas Raiders? Let's hear in the chat. Give us some of your thoughts. Jake, so much to get to. We're going to talk about some of the dominating performances that we saw from both offense and defensive sides of the ball. We'll talk about Jim Harbaugh and Jesse Minter. We'll talk about Greg Roman. Obviously was not perfect. First half was tough to watch on offense. But there were still things that were great to see on both sides. And with that, I believe Jake is needing to check out for a second. I don't know if he's not working, but I'll take a lead for a sec. Chargers fans, number 5 overall, Mr. Joe Alt, have a day. 0 pressures given up by Mr. Joe Alt. And for me, that's arguably the biggest win of all of them. So let's get to this. Let me get to some of these comments. I'm way behind. Let's see here. Number 1 in the division, says Gilbert. If you guys know, if you guys don't know, if this is your first time in a live show, hit us up in the chat. Leave a comment. topic we'll do our best to discuss live on the show. Today, we've got some voicemails as well, which should be fun. The Chargers Unleashed hotline was alive and well, so we'll get to that here in a second. And we'll obviously get to all the takeaways and things from the game. Kyle Tucker says, Poona Ford took on 3 of their linemen and said, nah, I got to do more. Let me snag this pick. Poona Ford, have a day. Have a day. The interior defensive line for this Chargers team absolutely balled out. And when was the last time Chargers fans saw a Chargers defense bow up like that on short yardage situations? Screw the getting gashed on other plays. I'm talking 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, 2nd and 1. We're used to seeing this Chargers team get crushed. And now it's 2nd and 1, 3rd and 1. Chargers defense interior goes crazy. Poona Ford, Tito had an absolute stellar game. Morgan Fox was out there. Tyler Tart was out there. Obviously, none of this happens without the brilliance of Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. Welcome back, Jake.
Thank you, sir.
But the defensive front for this Chargers team absolutely smoked expectations of this Chargers team. So, Jake, let's kind of get to the key takeaways. If you were to kind of go through the 3 biggest takeaways from this game, 30,000-foot view before we get to the nitty-gritty stuff, where would you say give me one of the 3?
Dan, remember all of the comments that Jim Harbaugh was talking about with the interior defensive line? How he was really talking up the likes of Scott Matlock, how he was basically saying that the interior of this defensive line was going to be underrated coming in, that he was very high on it. When we ourselves were even talking about at that point in time, like, well, you might need some more reinforcements. This, of course, was prior to the Tart signing. Dan, I was so impressed with what the Chargers interior defensive line was doing to the Raiders run game. Outside of a few runs that they allowed, I thought they were great in terms of taking that aspect out of the game, especially early. I was very impressed with some of the penetration they were getting. It was allowing Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa to get loose and do what they do. Dan, if that's something that this Chargers team is now going to start dictating defensively, to where you're getting pressure up the middle, you're getting penetration up the middle, you can take away an aspect of an opposing team's offensive game plan. These are it's weird talking about this, because this is what happens to the Chargers. The Chargers don't do this to other teams.
For those who don't know Jake Hefner, and I don't blame Jake Hefner. I'm putting a spot here for a sec, Jake, because we've gone through years of seeing this team just crumble. And Kyle Tucker over here says Control Alt deleted Max Crosby. Yep. And you saw them flail at the end of the game when WR Ladd McConkey iced it, and that whole fight broke out, which is so stupid, but so apropos for Raiders fans. Chargers fans are used to seeing this Chargers defense get gashed and let go of win after win after win, and have to rely on the heroics of Justin Herbert to carry them. And so when you see this Chargers offense consistently stuck in mud because of penalties or offensive lines getting dominated for a second, or they're unable to establish a run, or, Will Dissly had a tough start to this game, you tend to panic because you think that, well, defense is going to get this one out, so we're screwed. Here we go. Cool. Jesse Minter's defense, typically like a bend but don't break. This was like, F that. Not even bending. I mean, there was one busted play that I don't even think Daiyan Henley misses that tackle if Asante Samuel Jr. isn't there as well, missing the tackle. Other than that, this game was a blowout. Their defense absolutely balled out. And it's because largely the defensive line, we talk about Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack. I mean, both of those guys had a day. Joey Bosa, this was maybe the best game I've seen from him in 2-3 years.
Animal.
And what made it so great for Joey was it wasn't just the pass rush, which he was doing that too, but it was the the tough stuff. It was the effort stuff. It was the shoestring tackle on Gardner Minshew. It was the chase down, forced fumble on Zamir White.
Early in the game, on Zamir White, same type of thing. It was running opposite Joey Bosa, and he tackled him for a loss before getting to the first down marker that was critical and turning the ball over.
We have not seen a connected defense like this. And we talked about it in preseason. I know it's preseason, but I haven't seen a defense connected like this. And then somebody in here in the chat was talking about adjustments. Do we do that? Do we do that here?
It's a adjective that is not, or a phrase that's not used very often when it comes to putting it in the same sentence with the Chargers. But yesterday we saw it.
And so Chargers fans probably largely are panicking when the Chargers offense stalls, including Jake Hefner. The Chargers offense stalling, and the defense is continuously having to make these countless stops after stops after stops, and they do it. And somehow Gardner Minshew decided to just gift us the ball, and the Chargers somehow miraculously end up down 1 point with what was arguably the worst offensive showing that I've seen in quite some time. And again, some of that's first-gen jitters, Justin Herbert back. A lot of the starters weren't playing before. Raiders fans showed out like we expected. By the way, Raiders fans, grow up. Show some respect. Like, honestly, it was so sad seeing how, again, not all of them, but Raiders fans got to be better. They got to do better. Yeah, that was bad. That was bad in the stands, and I hope the Chargers do something because that is unacceptable. But they did the thing, man. The Chargers defense did something that we have been begging for. And then finally, the Chargers offense kicks it up a gear, kind of gain their rhythm. All those body blows that we talk about that the Chargers needs to do, the Greg Roman offense does. They stick with the run game. And the second half, the third quarter, going into the fourth quarter, all of those Ben Herbert fourth quarter training sessions that we see at training camp start to pay dividends. The check gets cashed in the fourth quarter. And just as Jim Harbaugh does everywhere else he did, they did it again here. And this Chargers team stopped them. Took the will away. I think I'm
more impressed by it, Dan, from the standpoint of it really just was a tale of two halves, especially just offensively. You go back to previous coaching regimes, maybe even all the way back to Mike McCoy. I don't think the Chargers win a game like that.
No, they don't. Absolutely not.
Eventually, third and fourth quarter, because we've seen the lack of adjustments that this team has made under the Brandon Staley regime. We were very used to seeing that on a week-to-week basis. Remember when we had the continuous week-by-week of not scoring an offensive touchdown in the third quarter, and the ticker was just running every week? Is like, when are we going to see one? When are we going to see one? This was different, Dan. This felt different. And yes, was it flawless? Hell no, not by any means. You still have a lot of adjustments that need to be made. You need to do a better job of obviously getting off to a faster start. Justin Herbert is going to get more in sync and get a rhythm. And there's going to be games where he's going to have to put it on his back, sure. But traditionally, Chargers do not win this game.
No,
they just don't. And to do it in a fashion in which you stay committed to your game plan. That's maybe what was most impressive to me, Dan. They had a game plan coming in. There was minor adjustments that were made offensively, which improved, which helped J.K. Dobbins spring for two of his biggest runs. Blocking on the interior was better. You stayed committed to the run, and you kept pounding, wore that defense down. And look at the result. And defensively, I mean, we can't say enough about what the defense looked like yesterday.
Nope.
It was tremendous. Remember the stat that came out of what Devontae Adams had done to this Chargers team in the last 4 meetings against the Chargers?
Insane.
Nearly 500 yards receiving. And you held him to, 5 catches for about 50 yards and 0 touchdowns? You'll take that. You will take that. If this was the first step of the message that Jim Harbaugh and Jesse Minter were wanting to show us, were talking about for so many months, I thought this was an impressive first step, especially after getting punched in the mouth in the first half offensively. You responded. That's what has been missing from this team for so long.
Yeah. Kyle Tucker says, from what I hear, the crowd's actually split pretty closely this year, which is wild considering 4 years ago it was like 75 to 80% Raiders fans. No, this year that is incorrect, Kyle. I was there at the game. Many people were there. It was probably 70-30, and maybe I'm being generous. If you look at the picture here, all the empty seats are the ones that Raiders fans were occupying, and then were showing the door as they were out of there. Chargers fans, I'm a little disappointed. I'm not going to lie. Too many of you sold your tickets to this game, to the opposing fans. And I understand there's a lot of hostility. I'm not bringing my wife and kid to a Raiders game. I get it. Find a Chargers fan or go to the game. For games like this, for statement wins like this, for Jim Harbaugh and company to make a standout performance like this, we got to be better. And I know the team has broken a lot of people, so it's going to take time. I get it. But yeah, the Raiders fans showed out, which I expected. But again, I've been to Raiders games ever since they were at SoFi. So just putting it out there, I'll be honest. Defense, though, Jake, talk about connected. I thought Asante Samuel Jr. balled out. I know he had the missed tackle, but that doesn't tell the story. I thought he was very aggressive. He was not afraid to tackle.
Look at the other tackles.
They were going off instincts. I thought Jazir Taylor played well, aside from that one boneheaded penalty that he had on Devontae Adams. The defensive line, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack is a man amongst boys. What he does to Colton Miller is just unfair. The interior defensive line, stout. And again, I talk about defense carrying the team. Jake, listen to some of these drives that the Chargers defense was giving up to the Raiders while the Chargers offense was kind of getting its footing. To start the game, 3 plays, 9 yards, punt. 4 plays, 8 yards, turnover on downs on the 4th down. The next one was that touchdown on the fluke, missed tackle. After that, 3 plays, 8 yards. Next one, 7 plays, 19 yards, punt. Next one, 4 plays, 8 yards, fumble. Next one, 1 play, 4 yards. Next one, 3 plays, punt. Next one, 3 plays, 23 yards, punt. Next one, missed field goal. Next one, field goal. Next one, 3 plays, punt. Next one, interception, end of game. That was it. Good. And last thing I'll say on the defense for a bit here, Jake, is those adjustments felt good. Yeah, those adjustments felt good. And Jesse Minter is a forking maniac. I love it. Anything else on the defense before we get to our first voicemail?
Sure, Dan. Yeah, you go back to the tackling. I thought the tackling was there. You know, again, you mentioned Asante Samuel Jr. They were trying to pick on him. Obviously, you go to your best pass catching weapon in Devontae Adams. But go back and outside of that one missed tackle, go back and watch the rest of the time that he was tackling. Was getting in there fast, getting low, making sure that there's not going to be any other yards after contact. I thought the way that the Chargers defensive line and Jesse Minter specifically, Dan, there was a couple series in there where you had all 4 edge rushers and Morgan Fox comprise your defensive line. Now, didn't yield the best results, but the fact that Jesse Minter is thinking about putting stuff like that together, it gets you excited. I loved what I saw from Tito. Loved what I saw from Tart. Obviously, Poona Ford sealing the game from a tipped pass. A tipped pass. Something that doesn't exist with the Los Angeles Chargers.
You saw Bud Dupree had a tip pass too. You saw a few of them.
Defensively, Dan, I thought that they were stout. And yes, not flawless, but in terms of everything that we have heard, you know, you thought to yourself, traditionally when your offense is just non-existent for that long, the defense is eventually going to wear out and give something up. They never did. Aside from that one touchdown play, they never did. And it was impressive to watch that type of play for 60 minutes.
It was it was something to behold, and we haven't seen this in a long time. And James, friend of the show, yep, it has been. Now, charging is 4 quarters of bone-bruising punishment. Opposing teams are going to feel this Chargers team. And you heard all offseason, all of the buzzwords about, building a bully. And you heard them talk about medieval style of gameplay. And you hear them talk about physicality and beating you up for 4 quarters and balanced offense and defense that keeps other teams on their toes and aggressive. They tell you who they are. They are unapologetically honest about it. And that was pretty impressive. Before we get to the offense, Jake, let's talk about our friends. Let's pay the bills. And then first voicemail from Chargers Unleashed Hotline after that.
Well, Dan, I thought you'd never ask about our friends over at BetOnline, but we'll remind everybody that BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your #1 source for everything for online sports betting. Right now, you can receive a 50% free bet for up to $250 on your first deposit to bet on anything from the UFC to baseball to Formula One racing. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game is over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our 150 slot games. Head on over to the website today. That's betonline.ag to get in on the action. Just make sure to use that promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit for up to $250. BetOnline, the game starts here.
Chargers Unleashed Hotline is back by popular demand. If you have a vibe,
knock the rust off on this one.
If you've got feelings, if you got takeaways, thoughts, or questions, reach out to the Chargers Unleashed Hotline, 323-902-7586. Jake, first one. I know. Jake, first one. Let's hear what Joe has to say about this Chargers victory.
Watch the Raiders. We've seen this before, and somehow the Chargers pulled it out. They won. I hate the Raiders. Let's go, Chargers.
Oh my God, Dan, I'm so happy that you brought this back. For context, Dan gets to listen to these voicemails. When Dan plays them on the show, I'm hearing them for the first time. So I'm getting all the emotions in real time. And this is great. First of all, thank you, Dan, for just having this random idea 2 weeks ago to bring back the Chargers hotline. This is fantastic. I don't really have anything else to say from that. I think his emotions spoke for themselves, and I think that he speaks for a lot of Chargers fans that are out there right now.
Hello, this is Joe. I've been watching the Chargers since 1984.
The best part is how quickly he transitions from this. I didn't play the first half. This is the same Joe.
Yeah, so it's like I'm at a level 2. I'm at a level 2. I'm at a level 2. I'm going to take it to 11.
We've seen this before, and somehow the Chargers pulled it out. They won. I hate the Raiders.
Oh, let the party hit the floor.
I love it.
Joe, yes, love that. We'll get to more voicemails.
That was great.
That's how most Chargers fans were feeling after that Chargers victory. And honestly, we'll get to the offense now. And there were so many standouts. And we'll get to what ended up being that scrum at the end of the game, which I thought was perfect way to end this. And it was a perfect summary of how Raiders and Raiders fans, a lot of them, acted in this game. This Chargers offense started slow, and that's being kind. There were so many times that they were shooting themselves in the foot with stupid penalties, pre-snap penalties. Will Dissly, I think, had 3 of them in the first 8 minutes of the game. And they just couldn't get anything going. The run game wasn't working. There wasn't much they could do. And it's insane that we now have a Chargers staff that is relentless in their identity and has an identity that they stay true to. And wouldn't you know it, the body blows count throughout the game. J.K. Dobbins take a bow. 10 carries, 135 yards, and a touchdown. The guy looks incredible. And we talked about it during training camp, Jake. When we were there live, we said this guy is electric. If he's healthy, he's one of the top running backs in the NFL. Still says he needs to get in better shape. He said he had a monkey on his back on some of those long runs. But RB1, no question, on this team. And again, they're going to split carries depending on who's the hot hand. He was the hot hand, J.K. Dobbins. And you can't help but be so happy for this kid. Grinning ear to ear post game. Jake, it turns out running game.
Dan, it felt so good to see that.
By the way, your bold prediction came true. You called this one.
I did have J.K. Dobbins rushing over 100 yards in this game for my bold prediction, yes. It felt even better to witness it, though. It felt even better to hear that interview with him after the game was over, because he has been on such an emotional and physical roller coaster over the past 2 years and having to deal with the injuries. Dan, I was telling you in that bold prediction, he is so eager to put those injury questions about him to bed. And yes, I did like how he joked about it in the post game where he was saying, he's like, I really wanted to finish those touchdown runs and get into the end zone. It's like, I need to just get myself in a little bit better in condition. He's like, I'm going to get there. I promise. But Dan, he's the guy between the 20s that's going to get you those type of explosive plays. You saw his patience behind the line, finding the opening that was finally there from the offensive line, blocking better. And the burst that he's got through the early part of the run, I know from just the standpoint of people eventually catching up to him, but he's got that burst and explosiveness to where he can create big plays like this. This is what he did when he was with the Baltimore Ravens. This is what he did when he was at Ohio State. And how poetic from the standpoint of Jim Harbaugh, considering that one of the best games that J.K. Dobbins had against him in college, that now Jim Harbaugh has J.K. Dobbins at his disposal to run the football. It was so good to see this, to see him get a game ball in the locker room after the fact, and just to see him give credit to the offensive line. Dan, you talked about it. He was one of the ones that actually mentioned the word connectiveness, which is why I'm glad that you brought it up again. That message is being sent offensively, defensively, and it will yield results. Mike Lombardi said it. It's not about the Chargers having the most talented team anymore, because for years people would say on paper, the Chargers are the most talented team in football. They're one of the most talented teams. Mike Lombardi says it's not about who has the most talented team anymore when it comes to Jim Harbaugh. It's about the most connected team.
Jake, we saw it. We were talking about it all offseason.
I was so hyped up for this.
I was dreaming about the moment. And I didn't know if it was going to happen because, Justin really isn't this type of guy usually, or he hasn't been historically, but they have completely transformed Justin Herbert in one offseason. More vocal and leader. He was doing vocal pregame speeches prior to the team starting. That was as emotional as I've seen him pregame. I think Derwin did it right before the game started, but you saw the check of the pads, the punch into the pads by Jim Harbaugh, what you saw at J.J. McCarthy, and you saw Colin Kaepernick and Alex Smith and everybody else. They did it. And man, I was the Wolverine just sitting there watching in bed watching that. That's the meme. That was me watching that. And look, the Jim Harbaugh era came through and it started quickly. And this game, in a lot of aspects, Jake, reminded me of back in April when the draft was happening. And everybody was talking about, myself included, a lot of people were talking about what they're going to do with number 5 overall, which we'll get to Joe Alt here in a second. And number 5 pick comes in. They don't trade back. They get Joe Alt. And then you and I talked about it live and on the show afterwards. It was that moment. As soon as a pick was in, I was like, well, here we go. This is the Jim Harbaugh era. This is it. Here we go. Scrap everything that we thought we were going to do previously. Instead of what would Jesus do? What would Jim do? And stay true to himself. And a lot of people questioned if they should have taken Neighbors or if Alt was, too much, or if it was just going to be a Greg Roman thing. And Joe Forkin Alt was an absolute beast. To be able to do what he did in his first NFL game against Max Crosby, of all people. If you are on Twitter, go look at some of the film they put out from the All-22 of Max Crosby and Joe Alt. Max Crosby can't go to the other side anymore. And when you've got Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt doing it, and again, Rashawn Slater was fantastic. The story on offense, other than J.K. Dobbins, was Joe Alt. Not just locally, but nationally. Joe Alt was absolute nails to where Max Crosby, 0 pressures against him. That is the biggest win. That is the biggest debut performance of an offensive lineman you could possibly have. The Jim Harbaugh era is alive and well, and it took them less than 1 game in the NFL to make the opponent wilt. And this is year 1, and I understand it's just Gardner Minshew, and I understand it's us, the Raiders. You said earlier, Jake, the Chargers lose this game previously. No doubt about it. That's why you and so many fans were freaking out at halftime when they couldn't. Actually, it was before halftime. When it was 7-3, everybody was just waiting for the shoe to drop. It's different. Jesse Minter, take a bow on defense. We talked about that before. Joe Alt, number 5 overall. Have yourself a day.
Dan, we've heard about the transitions from offensive tackles coming into the league. And eventually, if there comes a time where they need to switch positions, that it's not always a guarantee that you're going to get the same type of production out of them on one side as opposed to the other. Not only did Joe Alt switch from being a left tackle to a right tackle, but as you mentioned, he's going up against one of the premier pass rushers in the league in Max Crosby.
I think he's the best.
Now,
it's him or Watt. It's him or Watt.
I will give credit to where credit's due. I thought Patrick Graham and the interior defense of the Raiders had themselves a game.
Yeah. They
were creating penetration. They were going for the weak spot on the Chargers offensive line.
And it worked.
Through Zion Johnson, through Trey Pipkins, through Bradley Bozeman, and they got pressure through there. But I also think that maybe some of having Max Crosby come inside on stunts was not all by design, but more from necessity, because there was no pressure to be had on the outsides of either one of the tackles. Dan, the most impressive clip of Joe Alt in pass protection yesterday where he's literally at the same time simultaneously just one-handing the defender and watching the outside over
without looking.
How tall is Joe Alt again?
6'8".
It's pretty damn good.
Nick says, babyface beast.
It's pretty damn good. That was a huge litmus test for a guy coming straight out of college that is changing positions to the opposite side of the line.
That's not normal.
And let's call it what it is in a semi-hostile environment. Joe Alt passed the test. Joe Alt passed the test.
That was, and again, like there was a lot going on in that first half. And again, I give the Raiders defense credit. They were all over. They were hair on fire. And the Chargers weren't helping themselves with all the pre-snap motion, or pre-snap penalty, excuse me. Like I said, probably 70, 80, 20, 70, 30 Raiders fans. That place was loud when the Chargers were on offense. But Chargers should have expected that. And I'm pretty sure they did. They just had pregame jitters. And you saw Max Crosby, saw defensive line kind of keep pumping up the crowd. Like I was there. It affected this game early on. And that's what happens when you let a team start off, especially the away team that has the crowd advantage. But the Chargers were able to kind of punch back. And for as poor as that Chargers offensive line, or just offensive front in general, looked in the first half, again, you keep depositing coins, and you're leaning on them. Kyle Tucker says, how weird is it that the all-pro tackle might be the second best on the team? Between Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt. One of them is going to have to be the second one. I don't know. But yeah, it is weird. It is weird. Goomba says, Little Maxie got shut out by a rookie. What was the stat? It was last since 2022 that he hasn't been shut out of pressures, Max Crosby?
You mean in terms of matching up against tackles?
Yes.
I didn't actually see the stat, so this is news to me.
I believe it wasn't since 2022. So it's like a season and a half that he has not done this. And again, this is against a rookie.
Pretty damn good. Now, again, is it week one? Is it maybe overreaction Monday on Joe Alt?
No, it's against Max Crosby.
I was about to say that, but thanks for answering the question. Look, there's going to be plenty of other tests that Joe Alt has throughout the rest of the season. Yes, this is week one, but if that's any indication of what's to come from Joe Alt for the remainder of this year, that's just such a good start. And to now build confidence for Justin Herbert to know that on the side where it would be Max Crosby just eating dinner and leftovers on a residual basis throughout the previous Chargers games, to where he always has to think about, do I have to step up in the pocket? Do I have to get through here to run, to evade the pressure? He didn't have to worry about that from that position yesterday.
No.
You already knew what you had on your left side, but to have the right side locked up, it was very impressive.
It was. Trey Pipkins, I thought, played pretty good too. And again, you saw that run game start to express itself toward the end of the game. We talked about J.K. Dobbins already, but some of the holes that he was able to get in and out of, like, that's not normally seen with this Chargers team. And the consistency and the persistence of Greg Roman and company to keep at it, not give up on it, and just start slinging it when it wasn't working, which at times I wish they did. And I'm glad they didn't, because look what happened. That was something to behold. And I'm not used to seeing that. KJ says, I'd rather be a boring team who wins rather than an exciting team who loses. Bingo. 10 points allowed.
Hey, Baltimore Ravens in 2000 used to win games like that all the time. And look what that got them.
You probably won't see a offensive performance that poor the rest of the season. And Jim Harbaugh talked about between week 1 and 2, that's when usually teams have the opportunity to have the biggest improvement week over week. And it sounds like he's kind of expecting that. Second pick by the Chargers in the 2024 NFL Draft, Ladd McConkey. Picked a pretty good time to put some defenders on skates and ice the game. Jake, what'd you think of Ladd's debut?
Pretty damn good, Dan. I mean, look, it's nothing to like overly gush about. We're talking about 5 receptions for 39 yards and a touchdown. But when you needed to have it, you had it. And you did it in pretty impressive fashion, because when he got that ball, Dan, I again, from where you're sitting, you probably couldn't tell exactly how close he was to just getting the first down marker. But you go back and you watched on TV, and when he's starting to stutter step, just everything in you is just saying, no, just go forward, just get the first down, And then he jukes one defender, and then another start and stop and jukes another one and just cruises into the end zone untouched. Those are the plays that he was making everywhere in Georgia. That's what was so impressive about that. And in a day where by 1 yard, well, let's just say from Ladd McConkey's standpoint, he was your leading receiver. The next one was Quentin Johnston, literally just a yard difference between them. Again, this wasn't Justin Herbert's game. And when I say that, I'm not saying it to say that he played a bad game, but this wasn't the game that you relied on Justin Herbert's arm to win this game.
26 throwing attempts, just 144 yards and a touchdown, but 1 sack, no interceptions.
When you needed it, you had it. Dan, to spark that one drive after the Raiders had missed that 49-yard field goal, Justin Herbert got an opportunity, got a clean pocket, threw a beautiful pass downfield to Hayden Hurst. When you needed it, you had it. And on that last scoring drive to Ladd McConkey, you needed it and you got it. And again, now we're talking about the first two rookies contributing immediately in week one. That's what you like to see.
First three
from your GM and your draft selections, immediate returns.
Don't look now. We didn't even talk about Junior Colson. Junior Colson was had the second most snaps among linebackers already.
Kind of doesn't surprise me,
No,
but I get where you're going with that.
There are 3 draft picks, 1, 2, and 3, all making extremely impactful plays in this game, and that's what's important. And what was maybe more impressive to me than Ladd's touchdown, yard after the run touchdown, was, and let's talk about it for a second, the kill shot that this Chargers team had on that drive. It started off on their own 8.
That's the other thing. Remember how far they had to drive just to get that touchdown?
Yeah, the kill shot that this team had at this, I think it was 7, maybe the 8-minute mark, if I remember right. 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and the Chargers are on their own 8, and they go on a 92-yard, 3.5-minute touchdown drive, and the Chargers just took the heart out of the Raiders defense. J.K. Dobbins had that 61-yard run within that. They were running it up the middle. Gus Edwards was doing his thing. You saw J.K. Dobbins kind of just take over. He had a 7-yard gain, a 61-yard gain, he had a 2-yard gain, had a short pass to Ladd, I think, early on in that as well. You saw Gus Edwards break out for that 11-yard run. They went through all their timeouts in this drive as well. So they take up 3.5 minutes at the end of the game, chew through all 3 of the Raiders' timeouts, cap it off with the touchdown throw to Ladd McConkey to make it a 2-score game. Again, 2 scores with, I think it was like 3.5 minutes left in the game. And the Raiders defense crumbled, and you start to see panic, and tempers flared, and talk about just chump stuff from the Raiders defense throughout the game, honestly. And that just sucked. Like you see great players with great talent and just do stupid stuff. Go watch what Christian Wilkins did throughout the game. Look at the cheap shot he took on Rashawn Slater. I have it on Twitter if you want to go see it. You see what he did in that scrum. And so when I talk about what was more impressive for me, Ladd McConkey, was not the touchdown catch and run and all that jazz, but he is not afraid to get his nose dirty. And seeing him defend Josh Palmer, seeing Quentin defend this team, seeing Jim Harbaugh run out there along with the rest of the crew to kind of get this team back on the sidelines, seeing everyone go fist to fist, not literally, but bringing the fight to them and not just backing down. You saw Max Crosby like pull Quentin Johnston's hair. Like, who does that? Not a good look by this Raiders. Again, I'm not surprised, but not a good look. But I loved how Ladd and the offense took the heart from this Raiders team. And they flailed. Again, move. And then next possession, Kuna Ford gets the interception. That's a wrap. Everyone's waving bye-bye. But the offense finding momentum was huge. Josh Palmer had a huge catch on the sidelines. I thought Quentin actually looked pretty good. What do you think of Quentin?
Dan, first of all, I know everybody's highlighting 2 passes to Quentin specifically. First of all, there was one pass early in the game on the sidelines. He's in one-on-one defense. It's actually a great play by the defender because Quentin had it. Even if he comes down with that, he's coming down out of bounds because the defender was pushing him out. Mm-hmm. Then there was the other one where Herbert led him a little bit too far. It was just out of his reach. Was it a catchable ball? Yeah, I think he could have caught that.
Kind of. So live, I thought that it was a Quentin drop. And then
you go back and you watch it.
I think that was more Quentin's route running was a little off, and Justin really didn't have a chance to throw it anywhere. It was kind of a busted play.
But Dan, I think it's after that deep pass where they had him on the outside one-on-one. Traditionally, where you would just see wash, rinse, repeat with the previous regime in terms of what Quentin Johnston's role was in this offense? Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh said, well, no, let's use him in a different way. And they used him in a crossing route, which gained 13 yards, which set up the first points of the game for Cameron Dicker to kick a field goal. There was other crossing route plays that they were running him in there. Get him out in space. Get him free. We're not saying that this was a huge step up for Quentin Johnston. Again, Sanjay Lal and Jim Harbaugh understand that with Quentin Johnston's role on this team right now, if DJ Chark was playing, we know that Quentin Johnston would be considered wide receiver 4 right now. We get that. We get where he's at as it relates to the depth chart. But in terms of stacking bricks, one week after the other, you have to find a way to not only figure out how to utilize Quentin Johnston properly, how you're going to utilize this offense, how you're going to get him the ball to where he can actually make productive plays. And again, I don't think it's something that's just going to have a, consistent weeks of breakout, Quentin Johnston going deep, making these huge plays the way he did at TCU. I think that will eventually come, but you have to start at step 1. You have to build some type of confidence and some type of trust between he and Justin Herbert to where he can say, I can rely on you in these certain situations. And yes, I know that as it relates to a stat line that is 3 catches, 38 yards is nothing to shine about. But in terms of where your offense was when it needed it, Quentin Johnston was your second leading wide receiver, not Josh Palmer.
I mean, it probably would have been Josh Palmer if he made it.
When you needed contributing yards, I thought that he got it. Now, again, could it have been better? Sure. But the Chargers' leading wide receiver was Ladd McConkey with 39 yards.
Yeah.
The wide receivers were not doing anything to help this offense in certain situations.
Yep.
So when your leading receiver is having 39 yards, the rest of your wide receiver core ain't doing much. But Quentin to finish the way that he did in certain situations when the team needed him to, I thought was great. It's nothing that I'm over the moon about. I eventually would assume that, especially over these next 4 weeks with DJ Chark being out, that the acclimation is going to get a little bit more. And hopefully you're going to get to that point where Quentin Johnston is going to be making some big-time plays.
KJ says, with all the positives said, we need a number 1 wide receiver. Palmer is number 3 on most teams. I would say Palmer is probably a really good number 2. I would give him number 2. I don't want to overreact to this. Again, I think a lot of this is pregame jitters and being behind the sticks because of penalties. The Raiders defensive line is legit. Like, that's a good front 7, man. Like, we knew that.
That was also without playing with Kuntz in that game.
Correct. Like that, the Raiders defensive front is a problem. And the Chargers were scrambling for a bit. But again, I think that's more of a first-time jitters thing and just rust with timing than it was them not having enough talent on offense. I think that their running game is going to be better than what we saw in week 1. Gus Edwards is going to look better than they saw. I think the tight ends are going to block better and going to have more catches than we saw in this one. Jake, Nate Dogg, I'm assuming is a Raiders fan. Y'all are soft. You expect football to be a tea party. It's football. I swear certain Chargers fans are super soft. No. I mean, maybe. I don't want to speak for other Chargers fans. There's a difference between physical and dirty. I don't expect football to be won in a finesse fashion, nor do I want it to be. And I'm so grateful that this Chargers team is now led by a head coach that values, prioritizes, and maximizes the physicality out of his team. Yes, football is a physical sport. Yes, emotions run high. It should not be dirty. It should not be dirty. And you should not be out there trying to hurt people. Fights after plays are over, going after people's necks and heads and ripping people's hair. Like, no. It's not physical. It's not being soft to call it out. It's stupid. Shouldn't be in the game. So, sorry. That was your team. And those are your fans in the stands, by the way, as well. Nick says, the offensive line was so much better in the second half. They stopped penalizing themselves. Yes. Jake, you and I were texting mid-game, and we were a little Worried. And I kept telling you, dude, they got to just stop getting themselves behind the sticks. And wouldn't you know, they cleaned it up with adjustments. Overall, that's a win, man. Obviously, literally and figuratively, but that's a win. To go up against Max Crosby and company, and yeah, it looked a little frantic at times, but looking at the entire thing, that was good. That was good. Anything else in terms of kind of the main guys on offense? I love the Hayden Hurst catch, by the way. That meant something.
Yeah, that was huge. That was huge. That sparked that entire drive to ultimately end in a touchdown. Again, Dan, you look at the rest of the weapons outside of J.K. Dobbins. These are the things that you would expect over the next several weeks are going to be improved. I think we're all realists here. When it comes to the Kansas City game, Justin Herbert cannot have a similar stat line the way that he had yesterday. You know that there's going to be more put on his plate to win that game, and there's going to be more that's going to be put on the plate of the receivers and the tight ends to go out and win their matches defensively, get open, and make productive plays. I would love to be able to sit back here and say, you could just sit back, let your defense do what they did yesterday, and let your run game do what it needs to do. That's just not reality in the NFL. This team hasn't been together that long to be able to say, we can do this every single week. I know that Greg Roman wants to do it every single week. But when you go up against the Steelers in a couple weeks, that's going to be a different brand of football. When you go up against the Chiefs in a few weeks, there's going to have to be a different game plan that you're going to have to deal.
Chargers typically shrink in those types of football games.
There's your next litmus test of what you're looking for.
Yeah. So I would say before week 4, there's somebody in the chat saying week 4 is going to be when it's really a test. I disagree. That was a test week 1.
It was definitely a test. It was a great start. It was a great start. Now you just have to build upon it. I like what Joey Bosa said after the game, by the way. I've started off plenty of seasons 1-0. Getting to 2-0 feels better. And that's what it's about. I know everybody has their games in their minds that they circle and they're prepared for. Trust me, you can bet your ass that the players have those games circled as well. But in terms of handling your business on a week in and week out basis and stacking this, in the bigger picture, it is more than just about getting wins and losses. It's about how are the Chargers coming together, the connectivity. How are they playing? How are they winning? I mean, yes, it's like a win's a win. You don't give a damn. I understand it. But at the end of the day, are you going to see this team win in a different fashion than we traditionally have had to watching Justin Herbert every single week over the past 3.5 years?
Mm-hmm.
It just felt good to have him for a change, give the ball to somebody else, and for a certain period of time, just hit cruise control. It changed the pace of the game.
Defense didn't let up either, by the way, which was great to see. Shout out to Steven for the $1.99 donation. Says JK 61-yard run was awesome. You know, and you heard it from him post-game. He wanted to finish that. And he was like, oh, boy, how heavy. Might need to go work on some stamina, which I think he's going to. Shout out to Nestor as well for the $1.99. Jake, let's get to a voicemail here. But real quick, Athir is here. Dan, let's go back to July. This is all caps, by the way, for those listening. I told you this defense can win the AFC West. When you going to listen to me, my bro? There's a difference between beating the Raiders week 1 and beating the Chiefs in the AFC West and for the AFC West. Like, that's different. But Athir, go ahead. Talk that talk right now. They want to know. So Brad says Dan looks baked. Do I look baked? Do I look baked? I'm just excited. Imagine if I was sad. Good Lord. Maybe tired?
That may have been one of the best, like, just out of left field comments ever. And the fact that just the way you delivered that comment, Dan, was spectacular.
Dan looks big.
Dan looks big. Shit.
All right, let's get to the next voicemail here. Let's listen to G Money in Connecticut, Jake.
Hey, Dan and Jake, what's going on? It's G Money. This is Gerald Garrow from Windsor, Connecticut.
What up, Gerald? G Money, Jake.
G Money.
What are you? Are you J Money?
I am definitely not.
J Unit.
I just heard the Chargers. They took care of business in the start of the Jim Harbaugh era against the Raiders, 22-10. I'm very ecstatic and I'm very pleased the way they started off this season, especially against the Raiders after what happened last season when they got humbled 63-21. I think the defense is just scratching the surface. They played really well. I think the offense has some things they got to clean up. I think I want to see them try to get some more shots downfield, but I like them running the ball. I really like how this team has operated so far. I know it's just one game, but I feel this team can do some great things this year. The defense is already miles ahead better.
Yep.
Than it was all last year. I think the offense, is going to get their footing once everybody comes together. So I'm very excited. Hold up. What do you guys think? Jared from Connecticut. One love. Thanks, guys. Take care.
G Money, Connecticut. Love it.
How many G Monies are in Connecticut, by the way?
I don't know.
I like this one.
Pretty much summarized the entirety of this podcast, essentially, of what we were talking about. Defense looked great. Offense still has some work to do, but you still found a way to win with your game plan in terms of letting the running game dictate the pace. You leaned on it, controlled that entire second half, and it won you the game. It's the biggest takeaways from week one. Not flawless, but it's a good first start.
Yeah, and again, the defense was, again, other than JK, the defense was by far the story. And not just individual player performances, but the collective unit, how connected they were. Bravo Foxtrot Whiskey says, who else thought we were going to run the ball on that last touchdown? The Pats kind of shocked me. Shocked me too. I legit thought they were going to run it, drain the clock, kick it to go up 9.
Apparently, so did the Raiders defense. Look, you hit him with that on the previous touchdown drive with J.K. Dobbins when they ended up running the ball in. Apparently, everybody thought that that's exactly what they were going to do, considering the same message that we were talking about, bleed the clock. Running the ball was how you got down there in the first place. And then you freed Ladd up in the middle of the field, and he gets past not only one defender, but 2. Great. Love it. This is what happens when you don't have a predictable offense and when you can rely on more than Justin Herbert's arm.
Brad says, I'm thinking when DJ Shark comes back, Herbert will make him a superstar, and nobody has him on their fantasy team. So we've got at least 3 more weeks before DJ Shark comes back. We'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if it makes him a superstar. Like, that's what Justin's here for. Justin can do that.
Let's just hope the hip injury, whatever ailment that he is going through, by the time he comes back, that he's going to be fully healthy. I don't want to see him out there at 60% for him to possibly re-injure it again. But that's what you would hope. For those deep shots down the field that you want to see, DJ Chark is essentially going to be your X receiver for that, for those type of situations. So, hell yeah, it'll add another wrinkle to this offense and something else that the Chargers can do. Until then, I'd like to see Brenden Rice active here a couple times over the next 3 weeks, especially if it comes to that Kansas City game. He can get you some of those type of plays.
Yeah, BFW says, well, week 5 is our bye week, so he's not playing again until week 6. It's a good point.
There you go. Fantastic. So then you'll have an extra week of rest, and hopefully he comes back 100%.
I think people are liking the voicemails. Shay, let's continue. Let's go to Michael. See what Michael has to say.
Hi, my name is Michael Sepulveda. My reaction to the game, I thought that the Chargers held their ground pretty well. I mean, besides, the Raiders holding up defensively, they were better, but the Chargers never gave up. and stayed their ground and were able to capitalize in the turnovers. I think that we have a problem in the wide receiving area, but these guys defensively put on a clinic today. Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, and Dobbins stepped up huge for us today. Dicker, the kicker, doing what he does best. And
we have gone how long in this show and haven't mentioned Dicker the kicker? 55-yarder? Is that what it was today?
Huge.
Dicker's leg was not the only thing huge in that game.
And yeah, Jim Harbaugh pulling the strings and showing us why he's a good coach. My question to you is, what do you think the Chargers need for their next game to be better, or what do they need to capitalize when another team is defensively playing better than them? How do you get through that defense? And what is the Chargers missing? And is Herbert going to have a good year this year, or
got a lot of questions?
Or will Joey Bosa stay healthy?
That's like six questions.
That's the big question that we all want to know.
Hopefully that's more than one question. That's more than one question.
I want to say
there's more.
That the boys put on a show today, and that they held their ground, and they played a good game, and bolt up.
Woo! Yes, bolt up.
Bolt up. Yeah, I felt good, honestly.
Okay, so let me get back to question 1. We'll try to go through all of them in that voicemail.
Can you remember those? Okay.
Yes. Okay, so the first question was, what do the Chargers need to do to, if I remember correctly,
beat the Panthers?
Well, next week. But essentially, what do they need to do when an opposing defense is playing better than them? How do they you already kind of saw it.
You just saw it.
It was that rare phrase that we haven't talked about in years, making adjustments.
Keep going.
Making adjustments. They did it offensively. They tweaked things. It doesn't have to be a huge overhaul of your offense, because you still stuck to the message of this offense and what your head coach wants to do in running the ball. But your blocking was improved. You had your wide receivers step up and get separation a lot better in the second half than you saw in the first half. And again, when you have a defense that can get you the ball back and give you more opportunities, this is what Justin Herbert, it's a rarity for Justin Herbert to have, Dan. A running game and a defense that can get him more opportunities offensively. So I think as it relates to that question, you've already seen what the Chargers can do. They've proven already from game 1 that they're going to be able to make adjustments. Jesse Minter specifically. I know he had his defense playing for 60 minutes, but they came to play in that second half. As far as the other questions go, Dan, I know he was questioning just wide receivers in general, that he said he had an issue with it. Look, it's an easy argument to say that in terms of Justin Herbert now being in the league for 4 years, that, yeah, this is probably the weakest wide receiver core that he has played with. This is not Keenan Allen and Mike Williams days anymore. Joshua Palmer is essentially being your wide receiver 1 now. Your free agent wide receiver that you signed in DJ Chark is not playing. So the rest of your team is essentially built up through a former first-round pick in 2023, a second-round pick in 2024. Actually, sorry, 2 wide receivers that were second and a 6th-round pick in 2024. And Darius Davis, who you mainly use for kickoff returns. Yeah, it's not the best in terms of your wide receiver disposal. But if you get to a point where Justin Herbert is getting protected, is having a running game that works for him, eventually the secondary is going to wilt. Justin Herbert is going to find his pockets, and he will start picking defenses apart. Mm-hmm. Remember what Tom Brady used to do back before he even won a Super Bowl?
That's what Ladd reminds me of.
It was a run game and it was a defense. And when it came to those opportunities where you needed to start taking control of the game and game planning more specifically, Tom Brady was able to do that. Remember, Tom Brady had Randy Moss, Wes Welker on a single team, and they didn't even win the Super Bowl that year. But you look back to the first few Super Bowls that he won, it wasn't the greatest receiving core.
No.
Now, am I saying that Justin Herbert can win a Super Bowl with this receiving core? No, I'm not. But in terms of eventually, and we have to remember, this may be the newest unit that has to get acclimated to Justin Herbert. Maybe even more so than the offensive line, with 3 interior guys playing next to each other in a brand new season.
Yeah.
This group, because it's so young and still going up against these defenses in crucial game moments with 2 rookies on your roster, 1 wide receiver 3 who's now being elevated to a wide receiver 1 in this particular depth chart, a former first-round pick that's still getting acclimated and finding his spot on this offense. Yeah, it's not the best. I agree with it.
It doesn't need to be.
It doesn't need to be. And that's what's most impressive about it.
Mm-hmm.
I go back to what I was saying earlier. Win the damn game. And if it's games like this where Justin Herbert is throwing for 150 yards or less and 1 touchdown, who cares?
Don't care.
Is it boring? Sure. You could say it's vanilla. You could say it's offensively boring. But is it Justin Herbert slinging the ball 55 times, getting sacked 4 times, and the Chargers losing by 10? I'll take the other option 10 times out of 10.
Yes, please. Chargers Unleashed hotline again. It's alive and well. You can give us a call at 323-902-7586. Gonna take me a few to remember that. Again, 323-902-7586. Give us a call. Give us your feedback, your thoughts, your questions, reactions, and we'll have them on the next show. HH4 says, J.K. Scott, the punter sucked. There was 1 bad punt. No question about it. And it almost turned into a kick return or punt return. But on the whole, he wasn't bad. I went back and looked. 7 punts, 47.4 average, along with 56. That's not terrible. And again, like in comparison, the Raiders punter was freaking great. You know, AJ Cole is huge. He had a 53-yard average, 47 to 53. So it wasn't that bad. There was 1 that was bad, but otherwise didn't look that bad. Robert D says 4 sacks, 3 turnovers, and 10 points allowed. That's a good old hat trick. Technically, I would say it's 4 turnovers because they had a turnover on downs as well on the 4th down stop. Any news on the Alohi Gilman injury? Jake, have you heard anything?
I haven't heard anything. You saw him coming out of the game late, but I didn't hear anything as it related to post game. If there is anything, I didn't expect anything was huge in that regard. So in terms of the latest on him, it doesn't sound like it's anything that's serious.
Yep. Brad says both of the absolute savage. Yep, I would agree. Jake, let's get to game balls. We have 3. We have 3 total before we get out of here. 3 game balls. Who are you giving them to?
J.K. Dobbins, obviously.
Yeah. 1.
No question. Joey Bosa, 2.
2. This is the hard one.
Jesse Minter, 3.
That's a variable. See, I'm with you on the first 2 for sure. And I might go Khalil Mack because he wrecked him and Joey Bosa combined wreck shop. There's so many.
They could split a game ball for all I care. I don't care. Yeah.
Yeah. Jesse Minter, I kind of want to take the easy route and just say Jim Harbaugh, because without Jim Harbaugh, Jesse Minter's not here. Without Jim Harbaugh, Joe Ortiz is not here. Without Jim Hart, none of this is happening.
Sure.
And so you saw Dean Spanos give the game ball to Jim Harbaugh for good freaking reason. And that's what I love about a game like this, Jake, is when you think about the game balls, and you're seeing a bunch of people in the chat here giving all these names. Khalil Mack, definitely. People are saying Joe Alt should get a game ball. Absolutely. Joe Alt was great. Cameron Dicker, fantastic. You saw the interior defensive line as a whole. Awesome. J.K. Dobbins, obviously. there's so many guys that stood out, that played fantastic. That's what you like to see. And you're not used to seeing collectively from 1 to 22, 1 to 53, if you want to go the entire way, work together as a unit without drop off. That was huge.
That's why I give Minter the credit, Dan, because as much as we had talked about Jesse Minter coming in, as much as we had talked about when we went out to training camp and what we were witnessing, as much as we were hearing about, especially those practices when Justin Herbert was not out there, of the defense, just in general as it relates to training camp, if you were to weigh who won the day between offense, defense won a majority of the time.
Oof.
And then you get to see a little bit of it in preseason. And you're just thinking to yourself, is this just preseason? Is this just the defense going up against familiar faces in offense and practice?
Is this real life?
We actually saw it in real time, Dan, and we saw it for 60 minutes.
You saw 60 minutes of competitive and smash mouth defensive football and adjustments by your defensive coordinator down the entire way.
I know it's just week one, but my God, that was not a mirage, what we saw in August and July.
No.
That was great.
John Smith, Puna Ford tied for the league with interceptions. Jake, huge.
Yes.
Big man hungry.
Yes.
Football. Big man hungry.
Tree trunk Puna Ford. A man by all estimations, just in terms of his height, should not be able to be a productive defensive lineman. But my God, when it comes to that phrase, the low man wins every time, that is Puna Ford. Hell yes.
Papa Daddy, let's go Chargers. I'm still screaming. I'm so hyped. You should be. I didn't sleep great last night. I was amped. After that. And for good reason. That was impressive. Division rival, they always say, counts as 2. Week 1 after the disastrous 2023 season, after the 63-21 game, starting off at home. By the way, I'm driving home from the game, Jake, and there's like thunder, lightning, and rain. And I'm like, oh, this reminds me of the Raiders game a couple years ago in prime time.
Poetic, but your feelings were a little bit different on the drive home after that game.
No, they won that game. This was 2 years. I think it was 2 years ago.
Oh, sorry.
It was the one on prime time, not last year. That felt good. Robert says, Alt has the potential to possibly make the Pro Bowl. Imagine both him and Slater making it this season. Will be something special for the both of those big guys. That'd be awesome. I wouldn't be surprised. Would you? I wouldn't be surprised.
I mean, I'm not going to say it's out of the realm of possibility. And I know it's...
I'd love to see him not play because they're going to be in a championship game.
Sure. I mean, look, I'll just say this. I love the optimism. And I'll say this. If that ends up coming to fruition, Justin Herbert should have a stellar year, a fantastic year.
Yeah.
And the run game should be producing on a week-to-week basis.
Mm-hmm. Robert says, but this still was not a complete football game for the team.
No, it was not.
Been waiting for one of those games. Okay. We're nitpicking here a little bit, considering this was week 1 in the Chargers offense and Justin's been out and all the stuff. That was a complete football game for the defense.
Sure.
Minute 1 to 60. And I'd give it to special teams too. And so if you told me that I could have a full 60 minutes of defense, a full 60 minutes of special teams, and a half of Chargers football on offense, they win it. They win those games. We haven't seen anything near that. That's why they win. Robert says, Jesse Minter is a defensive guru that Staley can never be, respectfully. Through one game? Absolutely. You can't even... The Chargers defense did something this year in one game that I think Brandon Staley's defense in 3 years, I think it was 3 or 4 times they held opposing teams to 10 points or less. I think. I mean,
it's hard to argue it, Dan.
It's hard. No, I mean, obviously, that's the reason why Brandon Staley's not here anymore.
I mean, what else can you say? You have 4 edge rushers at one time playing on the line. I don't care if it didn't get results, but for the fact that Jesse Minter is just batshit crazy to do something like that, I love it. Because eventually something like that is going to pan out and it's going to win some of those reps. I like the fact that Jesse Minter is thinking of stuff like that. We've talked about it multiple times on this show. Jesse Minter has been called by his peers, especially the ones in Michigan, as the most adaptive coach they have ever played with. And we're talking about veteran coaches saying this. I know it's 1 week, but we had seen all these tea leaves in the preseason, in practice. We were just kind of in our own reservations like, well, is this just practice? Is this just preseason? No, it wasn't.
Nope.
If maybe Rex Ryan said it best this morning, Dan, on Get Up, when he said they were recapping the Chargers and Raiders game. And they're saying, it was great for Jim Harbaugh. And He's like, and they finally have a defense now. It's not some, Division III former quarterback as a head coach.
Brandon Staley catching strays.
Yes.
Yeah. Nick says, shout out to our GM, Joe Ortiz, Chef Joe Ortiz, already on the waiver wire again, looking up free agents. You saw Matt Hankins release, and they brought in, who was the corner they brought in?
I cannot pronounce his name properly, so I won't attempt to.
Okay, but they brought in a new corner.
Churn the bottom of the roster.
Yes, keep churning. Churn it like butter. Churn it like butter. Great game overall, says Bootlegger, but do we need to be worried about the interior offensive line? Again, you went up against arguably the best interior defensive lineman in the NFL. And first half was rough for a lot of things, but I don't think it's going to look that bad often.
Look, keep this quote for when the Chargers have to play against the Chiefs.
Yep.
And Chris Jones. Because let's just be real about it. You're going to be saying the same thing in just a few short weeks. You might be saying the same thing against the Steelers. This is not going to be a flawless offense that is going to go out and dominate teams as much as we would like to. As much as we would like to put away, the respiratory machine that I made fun of for so damn long in terms of those late minute victories that the Chargers would somehow get that raise the stress levels up, that get us all freaked out. The biggest thing as it relates to this team was how do they respond? And for the last 3.5 years, the Chargers don't respond to pressure. They didn't respond to pressure. They couldn't respond to pressure. They didn't have adjustments to be made. But I'm seeing some comments in here just as far as saying 7 punts in here is pathetic. Yeah, I don't disagree. But the Chargers still won the damn game. They won the second half. Does anybody remember how the New England Patriots won their last Super Bowl in one of the most ugly Super Bowl performances from either team? And all it took was literally one drive from New England at the end of that game to get them a Super Bowl. Both teams played like shit for 3.5 quarters. And the Patriots woke up for a half a quarter at the end of that game and won it. Like I said, I don't give a damn if J.K. Scott is punting 18 times.
When you got a defense
if it means eventually that the Chargers are going to find their footing offensively and get a victory, good. I'm not saying that that's how they're going to be able to win every game. Hell no, you can't sustain stuff like that. But if you're going to find different ways to win than the same way that you traditionally lost, I'll take that every day.
Yeah, we're wrapping up here. John Smith says, I can't believe we were saying our defense won this game. I thought I would never say that in my Chargers lifetime. Jake, we talked about this for months, hell, for years. Give Justin Herbert an average defense. Average. They're going to be just fine. And I think the defense is going to be better than the average. I don't want to get too excited, but damn it. They're getting me. Robert says, kudos to the Spanos family for finally emptying out their wallets to improve everything from the GM all the way down, not to mention the new training facility, the Bolt. Yep. You saw Dean Spanos in the locker room giving game balls to both the head coach and GM. So full circle for sure. Jake, anything else?
It's a good victory Monday, Dan. It's a good victory Monday. It's one. It's
been a minute since we had a victory Monday. Like in a real NFL game that wasn't preseason.
It wasn't the prettiest in the first half. And by no means is it flawless. By no means are the Chargers some unstoppable juggernaut coming out of the gate. No. Plenty of stuff to correct over the next several weeks of the NFL season. But the difference with this team that we have said time and time again, go to Brandon Staley, go to Anthony Lynn, go to Mike McCoy, and in some respects even go back to Norv Turner. You have not had a coaching staff like this since Marty Ball. And it's going to be different. It's a different way the game is played nowadays. I get it. But in terms of Justin Herbert now having to not rely on number 10 to win you every single game, be happy about it. Anybody that wants to complain as far as the penalties, this, that, and the other, players not showing up, the offensive line, the interior looking mediocre out of week one, I'm not going to disagree with you. I'm not going to say you're even negative.
The offense was far from perfect.
Sure. It was essentially non-existent in the first half. I'm with you. Mm-hmm. I'm not over here picking dandelions and living in the rainbows. Not by any means. I'm happy that the Chargers won, for sure. You're not going to be able to win like this every week.
Because one thing about Jake Hefner that you should know is the sun isn't always shining.
If you've been watching this show long enough, you know how pessimistic I can get. And you got me over here sounding like Dan Wolkenstein right now. And this is really just a turn of the coin. But look, hell, it could have been worse ways to win. Could have been damn worse ways to win.
When's the last time you said that?
Could have been worse ways to lose, too. Did anybody see the Titans and Chicago Bears game?
Woof.
Could have been worse ways to lose. Did anybody see the Bengals and the New England Patriots game?
Whoa, or the Browns.
Be happy you got a win. You start off 1-0 against the divisional opponent. Love it.
Is a win. Papa Daddy says, my mom had texted me, why do we keep running up the middle? It's not working. All I responded was, it will. And then JK went crazy. Attaboy. You felt so smart, Papa Daddy. I bet you were like, Mama, I told you. Leo, I feel like we finally have the fourth quarter advantage now. Feels good. Jake, this was fun. Went a little long today, but worth it with the new voicemails and the Chargers Unleashed hotline. Hope folks enjoyed it. Again, we'll be doing that after every game the rest of the season. Look, wasn't perfect, but defense looked fantastic. Offensive line in the second half looked great. You saw a running game. For the most part, the Chargers offense kept it clean. It was close with that interception that wasn't an interception, but it was close. No turnovers on offense equals usually in a Jim Harbaugh-led team, victories. And that's what we saw. Jake, anything else before we get out of here on this Victory Monday? What are you eating for dinner on Victory Monday?
Sushi.
Ooh.
Sushi.
I'm going for Indian food tonight.
Nice.
Again, 323-902-7586. If you have not done so already, please hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube, and you can find us anywhere you follow your podcasts. Chargers defeat the Raiders. Say it again. The Chargers defeat the Raiders 22-10. Chargers open up their 2024 season at 1-0. Next up, Carolina Panthers. We'll talk about that as we continue on. But until next time, for Jake Hefner, you can find him at Jake D. Hefner. Myself, you can find at Dan W. Sport. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time on the next Chargers Unleashed.
At Ashley, you'll find colorful furniture that brings your home to life. Ashley makes it easier than ever to express your personal style with an array of looks in fun trending hues to choose from earth tones to vibrant colors to calming blues and greens. Ashley has pieces for every room in the house in the season's most sought-after shades. A more colorful life starts at Ashley. Shop in store or online today. Ashley, for the love of home.